One really big thing that sketchnoting has helped me understand better over time is strategy. Any kind of visualization, for me, has three aims. We want to increase clarity, connection, meaning. I can think of strategy as an icon, as a chess piece. Now, in some ways, this works because it tells me a bit about what strategy is, making choices. But it's not really useful in any kind of business sense, because an icon by itself, and more importantly, the thinking behind why I would just want to draw an icon, it's just not enough. It's too generic, and it's also falsely reductive. By that I mean there's a lot of important information that is missing. And then the more I was facilitating, the more I guess encountered that strategy is a monolith. And what I mean by that is strategy tends to be experienced in big meetings and big strategy decks. And look, there might be images within those strategy decks, but it's still a lot of information. And the pattern of conventional strategy I tend to find is people talk about a vision. They have a massive amount of objectives. And then there's just this kind of hope in between. In other words, we wonder how we relate the objectives we're doing to the vision that we said we're gunning for. And what this tends to mean is that when strategy is done like this and experienced like this, it's hard to understand, it's hard to relate to. And when we find it's hard to understand and relate to, it's then hard to activate, either individually or collectively. And what I tend to find is when leadership puts strategy together conventionally, it's kind of viewed as this product to be sold rather than a process to be involved in. When I started to break it down into its composite objects by sketching, then it started to make more sense to me. So what I mean is I always kind of put the customer at the center. I always thought about, well, what problem are we solving? And there's always that connection between customers and the problem. And how are we solving that problem for the customers? Well, there's got to be some kind of offering, some kind of product or service that is meant to help these people solve this problem. The vision was still there, that's still important. The objectives. And the more I started mapping out strategy as a system in this way, the more I realized that I can see it as a system. I can talk about the strategy as a system of these connected parts. And once I realized that, well, then I could bring in other things like the values. Purpose, how would we know when we've gotten the vision? And that's why success metrics are really important. And lastly, who are the people who are going to create this offering for these people to solve this problem with these values and objectives? By sketchnoting out the composite parts and seeing what relationships they are, this is how I kind of stumbled upon this system way of looking at strategy. And so I realized that rather than approaching strategy as one whopping big monolith like this, where everything had to be discussed in one meeting or one corporate offsite, I realized that in a system sense, I can invite different sorts of people, different stakeholders from different places in the organization to discuss different parts of the strategy and keep it related.